Okay.
Okay, right, let's start.
Let's crack on.
So,
Bloody technical
share your
problems.
screen again.
Right. Good evening, everybody. I hope you can all hear me now.
Right, okay, yeah. So the theme of tonight is 911.
Yes. And that was kind of my choice. You wanted to do moon landings, which we can definitely do moon landings at some point. I'm not as... thing with the moon landings, well, one of the things about 9/11, rather, is that there's .com, but he's rebuilt it and all of the old links are dead. But the information is still there. And so moon landings, there's not quite so much there. I mean, the problem with the moon landings is there's a bunch of grainy images from the moon, supposedly, allegedly, possibly not. Then there's Stanley Kubrick and all of the rumours surrounding that. And I wouldn't be surprised me if it wouldn't honestly surprise me if they faked it. But I just thought starting with 9/11 was a nice place to start, and particularly Judy Wood, because when I first did, you won't see anything about Judy Wood on codeshit.com because I didn't find out about her until fairly recently, and a lot of her research and her whole approach to it, which was that let's look at what happened, and then from once we can see what happened, then we can start to work out how it happened and who did it and why they did it in that order. But unless you're actually properly looking at what happened and trying to do so from a neutral frame of reference, you're never going to get anywhere. And I'm a big fan of detective TV shows like Poirot and Sherlock Holmes and things like that. And it's very much a detective's mindset. And the other one is follow the money, which is why I sent you that link about, it's a James Corbett documentary, 9/11, Follow the Trillions, which is fascinating. And there's massive financial flows that happened pretty much the morning of 9/11. There's that story about Fuji having an entire floor full of UPS batteries that were never switched on.
That's a new one on me. I've not seen that one before.
Yeah, that was a mad one, but there was loads of those. I mean, there was reports from people in the building that in the months preceding 9/11, there was huge amounts of work being done, and there was trucks coming in the middle of the night, and God knows what else. And so I think we can all establish that one thing that we know for sure is that, as with the big nasty that we have at the moment, the government narrative is complete nonsense and it's all propaganda. To get information about these sorts of events is at the very start, because it's before the official narrative has been completely distributed, and you'll get a lot of journalists talking off the cuff and talking to witnesses. And the good thing is that there are people out there who record this stuff, because quite often you'll see interviews with witnesses that happen on the day and then you never see them again, because what they're saying just contradicts the official narrative.
Yeah.
And the other, I mean, with Judy Wood, should we see if the screen share works?
Yeah, go for it.
And just the guys will have to let us know if we've got issues with it. With my audio. This is Judy Wood's website, but it's running on my local system, partially because I don't want anyone to get rid of it, and these things can disappear down the memory hole. I'm going to start at the bottom of her evidence list, because to me this is one of the most compelling reasons why even the conventional alternative theories about thermite, and I mean the big theory that I was sort of settled on before I found out about Judy Wood was thermite, because there's a form of nanothermite that can be painted on, and so if you have loads of workmen working in the lift shafts and around those central columns, it'd be easy under the cover of we're repainting to put thermite on there. But the thing you have to remember with World Trade Center is that it was built in a bathtub. Yeah. And it's built, here we go. That's the bathtub. And so if you'd had the entire, one of Julie Woods' arguments is that if the entire weight of both structures had essentially been killed with thermite and the whole lot actually collapsed, then the seismic shock of that would have been more than enough to crack the bathtub, and it would have basically flooded Lower Manhattan completely. And there's subway lines that run into it and everything. It would have been, on a...
So let's take a step back slightly.
Sure, of course.
There was an attempt made on the World Trade Center sometime before 9/11.
Yeah, 1990. It was in the 90s, and that was, I think it was a car bomb.
Yeah,
or a truck bomb, very large bomb in the basement.
Yeah,
which it's like, it would be. I don't know. It's kind of like with the size of those buildings, the whole notion that you could bring one or either of them down by putting even a really big bomb in the basement. It's nonsensical. And if again with that much kinetic energy, it would have cracked the bathtub. And if that seal cracks, that is a whole shit ton of river that wants to enter into Lower Manhattan. And so this idea that, and like I said, it was all fairly new to me a couple of months ago, but you can see it on the seismic. There's some seismic graphs as well, that the kind of seismic shock that was seen was way too small. I mean, she compares it to this Seattle Kingdom, and she does that through her presentation's big sports stadium, and she measured the seismic shock of that comparatively little thing being dropped, and it was much longer and much more intense than anything that was seen at the World Trade Center. So how does that happen? And it's one of the questions that she kept asking is, this is what we're seeing. How do you explain that? You can say, okay, it was planes, or it was what is it, the little clippy things that held the floors together, which is what I think NIST was saying it was.
Nonsense.
But that doesn't explain large amounts of debris. And what does explain it, which is what you actually see.
Well, one of the problems I find is there isn't large amounts of debris.
Exactly.
Because when you look at the piles, when you look at the size of the pile after those buildings are down, it's
hardly anything there.
Yeah. It's like a 20.
And the other one that's really weird is supposedly World Trade Center 7 caught fire and then it just collapsed.
Yeah.
That's the third building that went down.
Yeah.
What's equally interesting is World Trade Center 6. How the hell do you have a big bloody hole in a building like that?
Yeah.
How does that work? The other thing that was interesting is that World Trade Center 7 had that was Giuliani's command post.
Yeah.
It was the city's kind of sealed in. They had this emergency shelter type thing, and it had its own air supply and all that kind of thing. And who knows? I mean, I've long suspected that there was something, whatever was done to the other buildings had to have been controlled from somewhere. And if you're going to do that, then the best thing to do once you finish doing your thing is to just completely demolish whatever it was that you were using to control
There was some other
building.
stuff in World Trade Center 7 as well, wasn't there? Because
Exactly.
I think, was it the FBI had offices there? The CIA had offices there?
Yeah, no, World Trade Center 7 it was a really important building, but also the two World Trade Center 1 and 2, they had masses of computer. I mean, they also had government offices, but they had big computer rooms and they had backup rooms, I think. Because I know that the plane that hit the Pentagon, it hit the side where they had all the accountants who were trying to figure out where the $2.3 trillion that they couldn't account for had gone.
Yeah.
And oh dear. Can everyone see that?
No, the stream's down. Stream's gone.
Yeah. What, my screen?
No, the stream had been...
the stream itself.
Yeah, that's it back up. I do not know what the hell's going on.
Why is it that this stuff always happens with alternative channels?
I'm actually getting to the stage that maybe we should just pull this and do it another day.
Sure, if you think that's
I
easier.
don't know. I mean, I don't know what kind of feed the chat room's getting. Let me see what their thoughts are.
Yeah, see what the guys say.
Oh, I've seen it's
Maybe
all
it doesn't
good now.
like the screen sharing.
I don't. Well, no, it should be fine. We've got a fibre connection here. It's crazy. So we've still got the echo, but everybody's saying it seems to be okay. Right. Okay. So let's go back. Let's go back slightly to. If we go back to what the plane that hit the Pentagon, right, left a round hole. Okay.
Yeah.
There was no trace of wings or engines punching holes in the buildings. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right. So the planes that hit the World Trade Centers left cartoon-shaped plane holes right up to the wingtip.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the other thing that's interesting about the planes that hit the towers is this one.
But the towers were made of 4-inch steel girders on the outside.
Well, the cladding was aluminium.
Yeah, I mean, the cladding's aluminium. But
and I'm just
that outer frame is 4-inch thick steel. Because the windows, see, you know how the windows in the World Trade Center are very kind of, what would you call them? Vertical, right? The windows are in between the steel beams because the building's not held up conventionally. It wasn't held up by it did have a steel core, but it didn't rely on the steel core.
Yeah.
Because the external part of it was 4-inch thick steel. 4 inches thick.
I know. I've seen an interview with an engineer, one of the guys who worked on it, and he actually said that it was designed. If you think of, I mean, I lived in Africa as a kid, and we had these outer doors that was mosquito wire to stop bugs and shit getting in.
Yeah.
And he said it was basically built like that, so you could put a hole through one part of it, and the whole rest of the structure would be fine. Plus, point of note is that the largest aircraft in service when it was built was the Boeing 707. And in terms of weight and amount of fuel and everything else, they were larger and heavier aircraft than the aircraft that hit the towers. So there's just the conventional explanation to me is I remember 2 days afterwards, because when it first happened, it was just after my birthday. It was actually a really difficult year because I lost my girlfriend that year, and it was about 3-4 weeks before 9/11 happened that she died. And so I had all of my friends. It was because my birthday is September 10th, and so September the 11th, and I had loads and loads of friends down, and it was crazy. You just get sucked up into it, and then a couple of days later, everyone had left, and I was kind of watching it again. Just thought to myself, no way. I mean, I love engineering programs and stuff on TV, and there's that series where they have those crack demolitions guys that go in and they'll take out a building that is really difficult, where they can't have any peripheral damage or anything like that. And I think it was on Discovery or something. Yeah. And I used to love watching those, because watching those, the way that they can just bring a building down like that is amazing. And when you look at what's happening to the 2 trade centers, that is not an aeroplane.
No.
And it's not the official explanation. But the other thing about the planes, I don't know if you I'm sure you can see my screen. You might need to make it bigger for the audience.
You want to try sharing again?
Got my picture. There's a picture up there of one of the planes about to hit the tower.
Yeah, you try screen sharing again. I don't think it was that brought us down.
Yeah, but that particular picture, right. I will have to.
That one there. Let me see if I can pull it up a bit.
So I can try screen sharing again.
Okay.
I just have to pull up that picture. Because there was something, this was something that caused a huge amount of controversy when it was afterwards amongst the kind of truth community, or 9/11 truth community, I should say.
So while you're doing that, Vaughn in the chat room saying they never found the plane nose. It's worse than that, Vaughn. They never found any of the engines apart from one, right? So they found one of the engines, but the engine they found was never fitted to the planes that crashed into the World Trade Center.
And the plane had 2 engines. If one of them is going to survive that there should have been more wreckage.
Well, there should have been 4 engines, right? Because let's face it, the engines burn jet fuel with high pressure air. So the temperature inside the engine is going to be higher than the building could possibly attain if it was burning through jet fuel. Right?
Got an even simpler explanation. Given the amount of conspiracy theories and stuff about no plane hitting the Pentagon, and given it was the Pentagon and had huge numbers of CCTV cameras everywhere, it would have been very simple for whoever it was at the FBI that went out and picked up all those security tapes to say, look, idiots, here, plane, building, boom, done, shut up now.
Yeah.
And they never did. Can everyone see the screen? Basically a picture of a plane about to hit the tower with an inset magnified section of the image.
Is this the one that's got the extra bit on it?
Yeah, there was this whole massive conspiracy. They were called the Pod People. And they were convinced that this is where some of the hologram and stuff theories come from, because there was just questions about what the hell is that on the bottom of that aircraft, because that is not normal for that particular type of aircraft. No,
it isn't. And the plane, it's really tricky because everything's on videotape because of the age of it. It's not really digital as such.
Yeah.
So,
and unfortunately, it's not HD. So I mean, if it was today and we had 720p or 1080 cameras or even 4K, you'd be able to zoom in and see if there was a bloody fly clinging to the bottom of the plane when it hit the tower.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, we got some other ones. It's this dust. Judy Wood calls it dustification when these towers come down. And we've been sitting when we were talking about the bathtub. What else would produce that? That's the crazy thing. It's not. I've seen plenty of controlled demolitions. I've seen plenty of building fires. I mean, I've seen skyscrapers burn for 12 hours. And oh, look, it didn't collapse into its own footprint in 75 seconds, whatever the hell it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it came down at free fall speed. So it came down in 11 seconds.
Yeah, absolutely. And the only way that happens
100
physics.
Yeah, 110 stories in 11 seconds.
Yep. And even if you believe in flat Earth and some sort of non-conventional notion of what gravity is, it still doesn't work. You can't. It's physics. You can't fact check gravity.
Yeah.
Although I'm sure that there's some little bastard fact checker out there that would try. But this goes back to what we were talking about earlier with the lack of debris. Let's just see if no, but basically there's another one of Judy's pictures that shows you the towers and how much debris. Let me just see if I can find that one, because basically it's a comparison, because she also compares it to this King Dome in Seattle,
right,
and the relative amount of debris.
So is this picture that we're seeing just now, is that before they started any clear up?
Yeah, I believe so. I think that was, or it was at the very beginning, because I mean, you can see large amounts of debris there.
Yeah.
And there's a few cranes, but there's also still a lot of smoke or dust or whatever
Yeah.
the hell vapor that is. I'm just trying to see if
Because there's the other thing that I find really strange, in that they cleared the debris away almost overnight.
yeah,
This was a crime scene.
and shipped it straight off to China.
Yeah, yeah,
Totally insane.
absolutely.
Yeah, this is another one with the showing the lack of debris, and then again, that's just fairly quickly after it happened. And I mean, when you actually look at what was there before,
Yeah,
it just doesn't track. It just does not make any sense. I mean, here's one. This is that kingdom, and when you look at how that collapses, you have an equivalent amount of rubble. So where did the towers go? Well, I mean, as you said before, we're talking 4-inch thick steel
yeah,
girders, but not just that. There's all of the toilets and air conditioning units and desks and chairs and I mean, it's not, because it wasn't just a building; it was a building filled with people and large amounts of stuff. I mean, computers. I don't even know how many computers there would have been in that place, but it's. I mean, you've got some of the biggest insurance companies and stuff in the world. So, I mean, they had entire server farms in there.
yeah.
And how does that? So there's just too many unanswered questions about 9/11, and that's why I always found it so fascinating. And I mean, there's this one again, which is related to the dustification, where somehow that spire just disappears.
Yeah.
And it's like it's vaporized.
Yeah, that's a strange one, because I was pretty much on it was brought down by controlled explosion type of, because you've heard the eyewitness testimony from the firemen saying there was, bang, 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 as the floors were coming down above them.
Yeah, I mean, I'm failing to find this picture. Judy has it in her slides presentation in a video. And it basically suggests that there was only about 6 or 7 stories worth of debris that actually hit the ground.
See these things on the left, are the ones that are round. See those panels? Is that the cladding, or is that?
Yeah, and it's like here you can see.
So that's aluminium, but behind that would have been the 4-inch thick steel.
But you can see the steel girders, and they're just between a couple of frames of picture. This stuff is just it's gone.
Yeah,
and it's almost as if when let's just assume for a second that some sort of alternative energy device. Don't want to call it a weapon. I don't want to be too pejorative. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, that some sort of other technology did this. The people who were planning it would know what it was capable of. And so at some point they were doing it and they were like, well, we just need to make these buildings go away. And we've got all these other factors. It's the downtown Manhattan. We don't necessarily want to turn the whole thing into rubble. And then someone put their hand up and said, yeah, but hang on a minute. If there's nothing left, and if these 2 buildings just turn to dust, people are going to start asking questions. We have to have some sort of debris. And so they were like, okay, fine. What we'll do is we'll take out the top sort of 90 floors or whatever with unconventional means, and then we'll set a bunch of nanothermite and other stuff to bring down the other bits.
Yeah, because there was definitely something burning, like 48 hours later in the bottom of the the bathtub because you could see the glow.
Yeah, but that's one thing that Judy says, that hot things glow, but not everything that glows is hot. And she's got examples of, let's see if I can find these pictures again, of places where there should be, hang on a minute, where is that Bible? There's a brilliant picture of a Bible that has been, oh, I'm sharing my screen, let's go back to her website. Energy and heat. That's the one. You've basically got a Bible. This is in the 9/11, which she calls the 9/11 Cover-Up Museum.
Yeah.
How can you, basically, metal melts but doesn't burn paper? As you can see, that's a Bible encased in a steel, one of those 4-inch thick steel girders that you were talking about. And there's still paper there.
How did it get into the girder like that?
It's a good question. That is a very good question.
Now, I know that you can, if you throw a book in a fire, it would, it's not as if it's going to combust straight away because everything's so close together and there's no air around the leaves and things.
Yeah.
It takes a long time for a book to burn, but you can't melt steel and not reduce the paper to absolutely nothing.
No, absolutely. And the other thing is this dust. One of the things people have probably seen pictures of on the day, people running away when the towers were coming down and this dust is billowing towards them.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking at the time, that looks very much like a pyroclastic flow. I doubt anyone is going to survive being caught up in that, because if we're talking some sort of kinetic energy that caused those buildings to come down, and if it was thermite, for example, there would be a whole shit ton of hot dust and gases and everything else.
Yeah.
And yet pretty much everyone who was in those dust clouds came away looking like they'd just escaped Pompeii.
Yeah, they did, yeah. And conveniently, talking about paper not burning, one of the hijackers' passports survived, didn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, that's. I remember that was. I think it was 2 or 3 days after it happened, and I remember that coming up on the news and just shouting at the television. I'm sorry. On a scale of 1 to 10, how stupid do you think we are?
Have you seen the pictures though of the people who are alleged to have hijacked, and then follow-up photographs of them still,
and a whole bunch of them turned up alive?
Yeah, exactly. So who were the hijackers? Were there any hijackers?
No, there's some interesting theories that there was some unnamed intelligence agency, essentially because most of those hijackers had a connection back to Hamburg in Germany.
Yeah. And
the theory, one of the theories is that either they had their IDs stolen, which actually turned out to be the case for a lot of them, because a whole bunch of these guys actually turned up alive and started contacting the media going, hi, yeah, that guy that's on there, yeah, that's me, and I wasn't doing it.
Yeah.
But going back to the heat that we were talking about, here on the top right of these pictures, that particular location, according to the heat maps, was 890 Fahrenheit, and there's no water. And you basically got workers all around here that essentially that water should theoretically be much too hot for those guys to be walking around in.
It should be steam, shouldn't it?
Sorry?
It should be steam.
Yeah, absolutely. Why is there no steam?
Yeah. Yeah.
And here you've got these glowing, that's glowing.
That's the bit I was talking about. So what is this then?
Well, yeah, I mean, Judy calls these little glowing things Cheetos because she's got it's one of the things I like about her is that she doesn't attempt to explain something she doesn't understand, but she also doesn't try and describe it with a conventional name like spots of aluminium or whatever, because if you're not 100% sure what something is, you shouldn't try and infer that you know.
Yeah.
Which humans are really guilty of. But it's paper. I mean, there's huge amounts of paper floating around.
Yeah.
So what the hell can turn concrete and steel into dust, and yet you have shit tons of paper left over? If it's thermite, if it's some sort of, even if it was the fires bringing the building down, you wouldn't see any paper at all. That would be the first thing that went up.
Let's go back to basics, okay? There has never, and I mean never, been a steel-framed skyscraper brought down by fire.
No, never.
Never, right? Except for the two, the World Trade
Three.
Centers. Well,
but
yeah.
World Trade Center 7 shouldn't be forgotten.
It shouldn't be forgotten, and there's no way that was brought down by fire, because an office fire doesn't bring a building down in a controlled demolition. That one, I would say, was definitely a controlled demolition.
Absolutely, and it's just covered up by the media.
Yeah,
like they do.
Well, I mean, let's look closer to home. There was a hotel in Madrid which burned for 3 days. And it's still in use today.
Yeah.
Because the frame was fine. It wasn't warped or anything. The Grenfell Tower, it burned for how long?
Wrong type of flame. Obviously, some special type of flame.
Why didn't
maybe American fire different to European fire?
I don't think so. But, you cannot bring a steel frame skyscraper down with a fire. You just can't.
Yeah.
So...
No.
Regardless of how it fell down, it wasn't the fire that brought it down.
Nah.
And their whole pancaking floor thing doesn't work either, because the time for that to occur would have taken much, much longer than the building actually took to fall down.
Yeah. This John Hutchinson, someone that Judy mentions quite a lot, because basically he did a whole bunch of funky experiments.
Yeah, he has.
With magnetic fields, microwaves, RF generators. And he's basically produced things like jellification of metal, levitation, all kinds of funky stuff.
I've seen him doing levitation and all that kind of stuff, but I've never seen the jellification of metal. I need to see. Is that stuff still available anywhere?
This is twisted/jellified beam. This is the bottom two pictures are John Hutchinson's experiments.
Right.
And the top two pictures are actual pictures from steel girders recovered from the trade centers. Now that I've seen pictures of like angled slices that look exactly like something that might happen with thermite.
Yeah.
But that bending, I ain't never seen that before. I mean, that looks like freaking Magneto out of the bloody X-Men's come along and done it.
It does a bit, doesn't it?
And how does a steel girder like that get so hot that it bends, but without, on this side, on the right-hand side, you can see a comparison with a steel girder that's been essentially burnt.
Yeah.
But how does that perfect curve happen to a large piece of steel?
Yeah, and that's not
literally
actually
like the Hulk has just come and gone.
Yeah, because
and squeezed it.
It's not even that deformed. You can still see the ridges down the sides. And it's still very much a box section.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's no scorch marks. There's no signs that it's been melted partially, or
you can't heat that up enough with an office fire, which is effectively all this would be. Because remember, jet fuel is basically kerosene. It doesn't burn that hot.
It burns really quickly.
Yeah,
and that's the whole point. Is you put it in a jet engine because it's very, very flammable. So once you've ignited a whole load of jet fuel, you get a big explosion, and a lot of it burns off. But we're not talking about thick oil. We're talking about really light, almost. It's almost like ethanol.
It's paraffin.
Like really,
jet fuel's basically paraffin. You remember the stuff we used to get to fuel our heater? Well, maybe you do. I don't know.
Paraffin, yeah. I lived in Africa, mate. We used to have
there you go.
That's when the heating went off.
Yeah, so basically
when the lights went off.
Yeah.
But this is another example of these
Yeah.
melted beams. So it wasn't just that one I showed you a minute ago. There's other examples of it.
So
And then you've got cars being lifted,
yeah.
which is
So what's done that? Is that supposed to have been the downrush from the building coming down? The wind?
well, I would imagine that's the conventional explanation. But the cars, what happened to a bunch of cars, is equally fascinating. We'll come to that one in a minute. But this is what she calls the jellification, which is something changing the molecular structure of that steel and turning it into like soft, gooey stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a bit strange.
Yeah, I think that's the toasted, comparing Hutchinson's experiments, or no, that's burning, and that's the metal selectively affected but not with high heat. So that's what it looks like if you burn something.
Yeah.
And there's loads of examples of that.
Yeah.
Strange fires.
So what about all the bump out cars? Yeah.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a minute. But
Okay.
another really interesting one is this one at the bottom with this this guy from the fire department. And I mean, he's basically just walking through flames. Now, if that's super hot, burning, melted steel,
That's paper.
how the hell is his foot not on fire?
No, that looks like paper burning, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is the toasted cars. And here we've got examples of cars on fire, but the paper is not burning.
Yeah.
And how the hell does that happen?
Yeah, that's a bit strange as well.
This is the toasted car lot, and she's Judy Wood. She got a lot of flack for this one, and she's actually able to. She's got time lapse pictures of before and after, and yeah, these cars aren't. I think there's a map coming up in a minute showing where this parking lot was.
Right.
But these cars, it just doesn't make any sense, and you've got some of them that are completely mullered. They've really been touched. How does that happen? If you have a load of cars on fire, then they all burn.
Yeah.
I mean, like, fire is one of the biggest dangers in a garage, in a parking garage, because you basically, if you get one of them on fire, then usually petrol tanks these days are made of plastic.
Yeah, the whole lot will end up going.
Yeah, it doesn't take a whole hell of a lot of fire to do that. So, but how do you end up with? And also, they don't look like they've been burnt. They're not black. They're not kind of charred.
Yeah, they're rusty very quickly, aren't they? If this is just after the event.
Yeah, you can see the before and after.
Yeah.
This is another. This one really baked my noodle. How the hell does that happen to a car? And why? How can one half of it be completely wrecked, and the back look? Yeah, it needs a bit of a clean, and it's got a dent. But also the lights. If it's fire, how are those lights still there? I mean, they've got rubber seals. I'm not saying that I know what caused any of this.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that there are some serious questions that we don't have answers to. And if you just go out and assume that you know what happened without actually looking at some of the stranger evidence, then you're never going to get to anything resembling the truth.
So what would affect metal and not plastic?
Well, that's a $64,000 question. So the two images taken before and after the destruction of WTC7, and how's that happened?
Well,
I mean, it was already mullered to start with.
Did any of the wreckage fall on the bus?
Well, it's the capture says it's moved.
Yeah.
And basically become much more mangled. It doesn't look to me
Doesn't
like
look
anything's fallen on it. But it's also, if something had fallen on the top bit, I don't know, you wouldn't, just doesn't look right.
It doesn't look right. No, it doesn't. I'll give you that. Yeah, because you can see the building in the background that's fallen down and it's fallen away from the bus.
Yeah, we can go back to it for a sec. I mean, and there's also, you're not seeing large amounts of debris around the building. Oh, hang on. Back in. It's like if a whole load of shit had fallen on it,
yeah,
it wouldn't have just fallen perfectly just on that space that the bus was occupying. You'd have a steel girder hanging over, and you'd have other bits of debris around it and stuff like that. And I mean, it's not like someone's coming up with a broom after the first picture was taken and swept it all up.
Yeah, it's just strange.
Yeah, it's bizarre. Absolutely, completely bizarre. Also, really fascinating. We got some pictures of overturned cars, which were no one's ever suitably explained how that happens, how you have some of them get overturned and others don't.
Yeah, it's strange. Very strange. Yeah. So the whole thing with what's his name, Silverstein, and the insurance.
Oh yeah,
is a bit ropey as well, isn't it?
I think it was within a couple of days he was on the phone, or I think it was actually within a few hours he was on the phone to his lawyers saying, "Is there a way that we can turn this into 2 claims?"
Yeah,
he massively overinsured both buildings.
Yeah,
and included terrorist-related insurance. And then, he had them filed as 2 separate claims, and he walked away with $7 billion or something, and an exclusive right to build what was supposed to go on there.
Yeah.
And also, those 2 World Trade, they were filled with asbestos, so they were actually a massive liability, because to bring those down conventionally, which they were going to, I mean, it's one of those situations where it's actually cheaper to knock it down and start again than it is to try and go through the whole building and deal with all the asbestos. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it happened for him.
Yeah, but tell me, we know there was work being done in the World Trade Centers the weekends prior to this happening, right? But because nobody was allowed in. The viewing decks and everything were closed and all the offices were shut. So there was work done at the weekends. But tell me about these batteries, because that's a new one on me. The whole
let me just
alleged batteries.
Yeah, let me just pop open a different window. It was Fuji, and did that article that I sent you from my website.
Yeah.
That's basically the only thing that I was able to.
It was
one of those stories. It was like the recovered hard drives.
Yeah.
After 9/11, there was this German data recovery company that specializes in, we can recover anything, even if it's been to the bottom of the sea.
Yeah.
And they were actually, in their promotional material, they were advertising the fact that they got a whole bunch of these World Trade Center building hard drives, and that they were able to recover data and stuff. And I remember seeing the original story and thinking, oh, goody, we're going to get some more information. And then it just went dark. And I haven't heard anything about that since. But the Fuji, it was, I can't remember what floor it was, but I think it was one of the floors that was near where the planes impacted. I think both planes hit computer rooms.
Right.
And they were computer rooms of, I think it was Marshall McLennan was one of them, and not sure about the other one. So, but I know the Marshall McLennan computer room was hit, and they're a big reinsurer.
Yeah. Do you think planes actually hit the building?
Well, it looked like there were planes.
Yeah,
But
it did.
I mean, who knows? I had this thought when I first heard about the Fuji batteries, that because it was Fuji Bank, that they had a whole floor that prior to 9/11 had been out, basically just filled with uninterruptible power supply batteries for their computers, which I think were on another floor. And they had techs in, and they had to have a raised floor to get all of the cables underneath, and they had people working in there for quite a long time. And one of the deadlines was, I think the deadline was before 9/11, but there was this whole rush of work, including people really need to watch the documentary on James Corbett's CorbettReport.com, and it's called 9/11 Follow the Trillions.
Oh, yeah, yeah. We know about the money, don't we?
Yeah, I mean, that just covers all of the financial shenanigans that were behind it, because there was call options and put options and
3 trillion missing from the defence budget announced the day before this happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the place in the Pentagon where they had accountants trying, basically, in all of the documents and the computer files, it was the part of the Pentagon that was hit by whatever it was and ended up collapsing. I'm sorry, it's just like, but this is, because 9/11 was basically where I completely woke up to all of this stuff.
So we have to remember, though, an aircraft is basically an aluminium straw, right? Yeah. And if a fully laden jumbo jet only weighs something in the region of 300 tons?
Yeah, they're not, I mean, they're designed to be, to weigh not very much.
Yeah, so you've got a thing that weighs less than 300 tons hitting a building that weighs in the region of 65,000 tons or something?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you expect to think that made a big enough impact to drive through 4-inch thick steel girders with basically an aluminium straw.
Just once you actually stop, once you basically stop believing what you're told, and you look with your own eyes and you think about it with your own brain and you try and analyze this stuff and you say, hang on a minute.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's got to be part of everybody that's looking at that. And on some, even if it's a tiny, tiny little voice that they're ignoring, it's there. It's the same with all this stuff that's happened in the last couple of years.
People will always say, well, the plane was going really fast. And yes, allegedly, the plane was doing in excess of 500 miles an hour. Now, that becomes a big issue for these aircraft.
Yeah.
Because these aircraft can quite comfortably cruise at 500 miles an hour at 37,000 feet or whatever. Okay. But the air becomes so dense at sea level, which we're nearly at, it becomes so dense that to do 500 miles an hour at that altitude would rip the wings off the plane.
Yeah, absolutely.
It would basically fall apart in midair. And then think of it this way. If you've got a can of Coke and you've got a sledgehammer, right? Does it matter how hard the can of Coke hits the sledgehammer as to what gets damaged?
It's actually quite a good analogy. Because that's, I mean, it's steel versus aluminium. Yeah. It's like rock, paper, scissors. Steel is going to win.
Yeah, yeah.
The other fascinating one is I never knew that there was actually a hurricane headed towards the New York area.
Yeah.
On September the 11th, until I watched Judy Wood's video, because it was never something that was mentioned, certainly not in the international media. But not just that, the track of this thing was 1 minute it's heading towards New York, and the next minute it's heading out into the Atlantic, and then it goes off towards Canada.
Yeah.
And how does, again,
So
I don't have an explanation for any of
so
this.
well, the
but
chat room's throwing things at us here. They've said electromagnetism. So that would be the John Hutchison type theory stuff. Yeah.
well, there's plenty of evidence that you can. There's an Australian company, Max. I've seen Max Egan. He's a few of his videos. He's included a clip from this Australian company that is basically advertising how they can create weather. They can create. So they've created snow in Dubai and rain in Australia, and they put out forest fires in Western Australia or whatever, and it's it involves electromagnetics. I can't claim to understand it.
Well, we've got to remember, HARP's just in Alaska, isn't it? Which is
Well, the Alaska facility has basically been closed down because I think the HARP facility in Alaska was built as a proving ground of the technology.
right.
And once they've figured out how to do what they wanted to do, as with everything, it gets made smaller and more efficient. And there's reports that there are different installations in various places. I mean, there's a lot of there's this lady that again Max Egan has talked about, who claimed to have evidence that the Doppler radar stations are actually the source of that they're doing something to the weather. Again, I don't understand it. If people go to Odyssey or BitChute and look for Max Egan's channel, it's called The Crow House. He's done a lot of stuff on that. I mean, he's someone that everybody should follow, and the people listening to this probably are anyway.
Yeah, they probably are. It's Max Egan spelled IGAN.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so where are we now? What about?
So that's the weather.
So Vaughn said, I think Vaughn said something about a tungsten rod from space, i.e., for destroying the World Trade Center. But that would break the bathtub, wouldn't it?
That would break the bathtub. I mean, that's kinetic energy. One of the things that Judy Wood has basically done is, with her evidence, she's basically saying that the conventional, whether you take a mini nuke or you take a tungsten rod from space or you take thermite or thermate, which is a subvariant of it, or even the official explanation, because the official explanation is that the bits connecting the floors together got melted and the whole thing pancaked down, which is just nonsense. I can't even really take it seriously.
No, you can't take that seriously.
All of those things. I mean, if you think seriously about the tungsten rod from space, to start with, chances are people would see it. Maybe not, but again, it's kinetic energy, and it would.
Well, it would come in like a meteor, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I don't see how that would account for the dustification, and it would be a massive, very fast impact.
I find it really, really difficult to get my head.
Yeah, and it would also there would be a lot of material that would be flung horizontally as well at very high velocity.
Yeah,
not these kind of big dusty, almost pyroclastic, but not.
Yeah,
hot
they look like
flows.
pyroclastic, but cold flows. I find it very difficult though to get my head around some kind of directed energy weapon that could do this. I mean,
me too.
Where would it come from?
I'm not denying that. I find it's, as I said to you when we were talking before the show, it's one of the ones that I'd heard about some of these theories about directed energy weapons and micro nukes and stuff like that. And I just, I don't know, even though I mean, at the time I was still kind of waking up a bit myself, but it still seemed a bit too outlandish. It's a bit like David Icke's reptilians. Yeah. I remember when he started writing about those in his books, I found it a bit, okay, David, this is a bit much, but he's been right about everything else. I'm fully now expecting that the reptilian thing is true as well. And yeah, I just found Judy Wood. I don't know if you found this yourself with your own research, that occasionally, I mean, you come across a lot of material from a lot of different sources. Yeah. And every so often you'll come across someone that you just think, this just makes so much sense. This is putting so many different
So
pieces into place.
There's a couple of other things that we need to cover, and one is the BBC. Because the BBC reported Building 7 down.
Oh,
20
yeah, what's the face? Let me just find that. So
20 minutes before it actually fell down.
Yeah, what's her name? Jane something or other.
And she's standing in front of it while she does
that's
it.
the one. And their explanations. There we go. It's still here. Let me just show everyone this. I just did a Google Images search for BBC WTC 7. So this hasn't gone away. Yeah, Jane Stanley reporting that there's a building there. Doop. And again, doop. Yeah, 47-story Solomon building, brothers, didn't. Still there.
20 minutes it took before it fell down after she said it had.
And look, here's the one where what's his face is. Oh no, we're not going to go there. It's BBC. That's the BBC trying to debunk their own shit. Seriously. Look, there's him talking to her, and there is the bloody building in the background.
Yeah, I mean, I watched this live. I was in San Diego when this happened,
and it's just.
I watched it live on TV.
It's mental.
Yeah.
And the fact that the BBC can sit there and come up with all sorts of mealy-mouthed bullshit explanations as to why that happened. I mean, it just. I just don't have time for the BBC. The less said about those dickheads, the better. So I'll just end up ranting, and nobody wants to listen to me ranting about the BBC because I blame them for more than I actually blame the politicians for, because they call them in America, they call them the media the fourth estate.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like they're the ones that are supposed to speak truth to power. It's like Sonia Poulton, bless her. Yeah. She's one of the few real fucking journalists that's out there. I mean,
and Chasing Dissent.
Obviously you guys as well, but Sonia's kind of
no, she's bigger than us. Yeah.
Well, it's not so much not so much that she's bigger, but she comes from that world, and I mean, it's. Yeah, and I didn't mean to dish you guys. I apologize because they're not the media.
You guys facetious.
The media. This is fucking media. They're dickheads. Sorry, I hate the BBC so much because if they were doing their jobs properly, we wouldn't have any of this.
Well, the other one that came up quite a lot and then disappeared was the dancing Israelis.
Oh yeah, that was. The 5 dancing Israelis, and there's an interview with them.
Yeah.
Again, all just covering it up. But they were arrested in New York on 9/11 I think they were in New Jersey, and they were on top of a van, and they had a camera on a tripod pointed at the World Trade Center buildings. And
before it happened.
The reason that they basically someone in the neighborhood phoned the police, which is how they got arrested. Because they were high-fiving each other when the towers came down. Yeah. With a camera pointed at it. And then they got arrested. And the whole thing just got buried, covered up, ignored. Yes. You're a conspiracy theorist if you think that they knew what was going to happen. And we're actually really happy that it happened.
Yeah.
And then, they went on Israeli TV afterwards. And it was just blah, blah, bullshit, blah, blah, blah. Whatever.
So... Have you been in a flight recently at all? Within the last 4 or 5 years.
A flight?
Yeah.
Last time I was on a flight was 2019.
Right. And did you use your mobile phone? Because you're allowed to use your mobile phone
now. Not actually during the flight.
Did you try using your mobile phone during the flight?
Generally, no.
No, because I did the last time I was on a flight, because 1, you were allowed to use your mobile phone, and 2, I wondered if I could make a call to my mother and say that I'd been hijacked and speak to them for like 10 minutes. And you can't do it. It doesn't work above like 5,000 feet.
No, and that's, I mean, the calls from passengers, even back in the day, because we're also talking about 2001, where the cell tower technology, the mobile phone technology is multiple generations behind what we have today.
I mean, you still can't go through a train
And
tunnel.
it's the problem with cell phones and airplanes is that you're going too fast for the cellular network.
Yeah, the
because
handoff.
when normally you're inside a cell, and then when you go from one cell to another, you're either walking or you're in a car or whatever, and the cells switch over. But if you're in a plane, to the best of my knowledge, you're going much too fast for those cell towers to actually be able to keep up with you.
Yeah, I think that's the case.
And so how did people make phone calls from
Good question.
planes?
Good question.
That's never made sense to me.
No.
But then clearly there were people in those planes. And there was the wife of, I can't remember the names, but
there was some famous people.
There was one guy's wife that he was all over TV about this tearful last phone call from his wife and stuff like that. And I can't remember what his name was, but I remember I was a bit pissed one night when I was reading up on stuff, and I thought, maybe he wants to bump her off. Maybe it was just like, and he's like connected to the intelligence services somehow.
Oh,
they're like, well, we need some kind of tearful last goodbyes.
Because I'll do it.
I don't know.
I'll do it.
It's just a while, like it's
remember, let's briefly touch on a famous, infamous school shooting and a certain Mr. Robbie Fowler, who was all smile and laughs and joy, and then managed to turn the tears on really quickly once the cameras appeared, didn't he?
It's nothing you see is what's really going on.
Yeah, I think you might be right there.
And that, I mean, to be honest, that actually that applies to our senses as well. Because if you think of how limited our five senses are in terms of touch, taste, smell, sight, etc. I mean, dogs can smell better than us.
Yeah.
Birds can see better than us. Cats have got a wider range of the electromagnetic spectrum. Mm-hmm. And yet we just assume that unless we can see it and unless we can touch it, it's not real.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you look at it, everything that's out there is basically decoded by your brain. So my brain, your brain, everybody else's brain is all going to be different. So we're all going to see things in a slightly different way. We're going to experience things in a slightly different way. So the reality that we see is the one that we create.
Absolutely, yeah. And the more that I learn about how the universe works and my own experiences and things that I learn, that there's much more going on around us, and there's an interchange of energy. It's like that feeling you get when you feel like someone's staring at you. Mm-hmm. Or you have a feeling like you're being watched.
Yeah.
I mean, that's our senses kind of picking something up, but what exactly are they picking up on? Because quite often in those situations, you are being watched.
Yeah. A lot of times you are. Anything else on the 9/11 that we need to cover? What about the trillions?
That's. I mean, it was the. What do you mean the military trillions?
Well, there was that, and then there was
money flows.
There was other things as well, because there was records disappeared in Building 7 that were required for prosecutions and things, wasn't there?
Yes, absolutely. I think both all of the buildings that went down, in one way or another, they had really important stuff. I think there was stuff related to financial frauds and criminal prosecutions and lots and lots and lots of convenient evidence. And then you've got basically, I don't know if people have, it's one of the things that Corbett talks about, is a company called P-Tech, which is an Israeli well, it's basically an IT systems company that does enterprise level system architecture, where you have people that have access to everything that the business does, and you create a computer system to manage it all,
right,
and to be able to look at it all. And to be able to, it's like warning people of dodgy financial transactions and things like that. And there was this massive push to have this, I think it was Marsh & McLennan, one of these big companies, they were basically completely in on it. And then on the day of 9/11, just after shit happened, within a very short space of time, there's this massive financial flows. And then when the towers go down, the hard drives and the computers are all destroyed. And so all the evidence, it's almost like a perfect bank robbery where you steal all the money and then you destroy the building and it's all electronic money. So once the hard drives are down and the logs are gone, the money's gone somewhere, but you have no idea where.
Yeah.
And then there's the put options, people making stock market bets on United Airlines and some of the financial services firms that were based in the World Trade Center towers. And people made a huge amount of money out of what happened. And apart from that being utterly disgusting, it's a smoking gun. How is that not a smoking gun that this wasn't everything that we're being told?
Yeah. Yeah, and Silverstein got paid out in double amounts.
Mm.
He got the payout for each of the towers separately. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean the insurance companies fought him for years, but he ended up being paid out. And now we've got the World Trade Center. What is it called? 1WTC.
I'm not sure.
Which I've got something fun. Where are we? One more picture. Because I'm not sure. Is there anything do the viewers and listeners have anything that they'd like us to discuss, or any points that they'd like to raise based on things that we've been talking about, or interesting evidence that they haven't shown us? If someone puts a link in chat to something we haven't seen or anything like that, because I think we've done the financial transactions, we've done the explosions, we've done Judy Wood, done the Pentagon. Oh, hang on, what about Shanksville?
The Pennsylvania?
Yeah, the Let's Roll passengers valiantly tried to get the hijackers and then the plane went into the ground.
Right, I've looked into this one as well, but yeah, carry on.
Well, there's a whole bunch of anomalies with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That not enough debris, and just lots of just suspicious. I don't know. It's one of
the crater was there before the crash.
Yeah, let me just pull up. Let's see if we can pull up some images of it.
So you've seen planes that have nosedived into the ground before. Lockerbie being a bit of an example. And there's debris everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's spread over quite a large area. That is constrained to one crater that has been proven to have been there before the crash.
No, hang on. No, that's not got this anywhere. Just trying to find. Yeah, I mean, these pictures here on the right, I'm trying to see if I can enlarge one of them. There's just something really funny looking about this crash site.
Yeah, there is.
It's. Hang on, let's pop that. Oh, that doesn't help. The thing that I always thought is that it looks like someone's burnt a whole bunch of shit and then just left an aircraft tail section at the back, because where are the wings?
It's not believable, because it wouldn't be contained like that.
And there's also
there was a plane in, I think it was Spain or something like that, or China, and it flew into a mountain, and the debris was everywhere. I mean, it covered half the mountain.
Yeah.
You know,
it does.
Even going vertically down, you are not going to contain a collision from a high-speed jet airliner in a crater that size. No way.
No chance. And when it does go down, it's not just the kinetic force of the plane hitting the ground. There's debris that goes bloody everywhere.
Yeah.
And you have engines like half a mile away and all that kind of thing. And it's also, I don't know, there's just something about that whole story that's got too much of the Hollywood movie to it, where you've got the, and I'm not trying to diss any
Yeah, I know,
passengers.
I
So
know.
let's just get this straight. I'm not trying to put anyone down or say that anybody didn't do anything or anything like that.
But
I'm just
again,
saying that it's so much like a Hollywood film.
and again, it was meant to be a cell phone call on a plane doing 500 knots, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And how does that? I mean,
And some of the flight paths that these people flew were pretty damn good for people that had never passed a pilot's exam. And
I've spoken to pilots. I mean, there's a guy that I talked to on Twitter that's a pilot, and he says the same thing, that the way that those planes were flown, and particularly the way that they were flown into those towers,
yeah,
it's just not something that a human pilot could do. Whether it was, I don't know. Let's roll off the different explanations. We've heard holograms.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, in theory, let's say those UPS battery things that were installed on that floor were some kind of explosive device designed to make it look like, because if you have them next to each other, you can fire them off in a sequence, so it looks like something's exploded through the building.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you then have some sort of holographic plane that you could make it look like it's flying into the building, you then have the issue of what happened to the planes.
The holographic plane has already come up because DARPA are now showing you that they can do this. Now remember,
they could do it back in the 60s.
Yeah,
that's Project Bluebeam.
Yeah, well, exactly. But they're showing us stuff now that looks fairly good. So you can always remember that the military stuff is 20 years ahead of where we're seeing.
At least, yeah, absolutely. That actually should be a future down the rabbit hole. We need to go down the UFO rabbit hole, because that's one of my favourites.
Oh yeah, we will do. The other one is the flight path into the Pentagon was a tight curling descent, right?
Mm-hmm.
That managed to get below the level of the lamppost but didn't take them out.
Yeah.
And flew across that lawn without touching it.
Mm-hmm.
That was incredible.
Well, again, it's not something that a human pilot. I just don't see how. I don't even think. I think even a computer would struggle to control an aircraft, because the amount of, you've got all sorts of different air forces, and once the plane starts getting really low to the ground, then you've got the interaction. I'm not a pilot or a physicist, by the way, but you'd have the interaction of the air and the ground and the plane, and it would make for a really difficult to control aircraft.
Did you see the car park CCTV footage where you see two frames? You see a nose of something coming into shot, and then the next frame it's just the exhaust basically as it's
and the first time I saw those pictures, I thought to myself, I wonder how many people and how long it took them to go through all of the different CCTV footage that they confiscated on that day to find something that they can actually use and show to people and say, here, look, here's the evidence that it was a plane. And they're trying to show us that, and let's just see if we can find.
I was thinking it looked more like a cruise missile than a plane.
Yeah, I mean, I just. But also, given the amount of CCTV footage that was from that day, for them to come out with what they released.
Yeah, I mean, the Pentagon is probably one of the most heavily covered by camera sites that there is.
I mean, we don't have the video. People can obviously, it's easy to find, but this is the Pentagon crash site. And that's the, hang on, let's just see if this works. I don't know if this is actually going to work on the screen share, but let's.
It's already burning in the background.
I don't know if this is going to work. Doesn't look like it.
No.
Never mind.
Not to worry.
But I mean, it's still, that's just, there's something about it that doesn't make sense.
The whole thing.
The way the building collapsed.
And the convenience of what parts of the building got hit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the FBI releasing a new photo. This is years ago now, probably.
Yeah.
But that's supposed to be the Pentagon.
So that's the hole that the plane punched in the Pentagon, but didn't leave its engines behind.
Yeah.
And yet in the World Trade Center, a thin steel wing cut through 4-inch steel girders.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and it was enough to make that whole building collapse. And
because it goes through how many layers does it go?
Well,
through?
not the whole building. That section. It's
but it goes
rings.
through like 7 rings or something right into the center courtyard almost.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sure it does.
And it was also that section of the building that they've been reinforcing as well.
Yeah,
which is another convenient thing. I mean, there's just no aspect of anything that happened on September 11th, 2001 that, from an official perspective, makes any kind of sense whatsoever in my book.
Yeah,
I mean, they've come out with all sorts of explanations, and the fact checkers are still at it.
Oh, I know. And of course, we can always go back in time, and all we need to say is Operation Northwood.
Oh yeah, that was where they wanted to hijack a plane, crash it into an American city or something, and blame it on Castro, so that they could invade Cuba.
Yep. Yeah.
I mean, at one point the CIA wanted. I think they'd come up with a way of poisoning a batch of cigars as well.
That's right.
And they did some really bizarre shit. I think there was one where they wanted to give him something to make all of his hair fall out, so that he looked really stupid and nobody would take him seriously. Which then brings us on to Blackface Hitler, who's obviously the spawn of Castro.
Son. Yeah.
How the hell did that happen? So basically, turns out that Justin's mum slept around a bit.
Well, yeah, she was a tart.
Allegedly,
allegedly, she was a tart.
Oh dear.
So I think we've done pretty well, actually, considering the mess that is this podcast. Hopefully next time we'll have our experienced producer, Mr. Ben, back.
We did it right. Don't worry about it.
I think
I've got the final picture.
Yeah.
Which is what was built. I thought this would be a final fitting end to the night level discussion, which is fun when I did experimenting with how can I take the top off a building and blow it up.
Who's flying the saucer?
It's one of the aliens from Mars Attacks.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, it's just that very silly film.
I can't quite see it.
Just screwing around in Photoshop. But it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it has. I've enjoyed it.
Me too.
I would like to apologise for anyone in the chat and anyone who's listening to it later that the audio isn't quite what we would normally expect from our service. But we'll get that fixed for the next time. Ed is going to come back in 4 weeks' time, yeah?
Yes, absolutely. What's our next?
Well, what do you want to do? Are you up for the moon landings? Or do you want to go straight to UFOs? Straight to UFOs?
Bunch of interesting stuff to talk about with that.
Okay, let's go to, or as they say these days, UAPs.
Yeah, UAPs.
Yeah.
Unidentified aerial phenomena.
What I am going to do for the
and we got some interesting Pentagon footage and probably a few names that not very many people know about. Who there's just to give you a taster, there's the guy that wrote the book is called The Day After Roswell.
Right.
And his surname begins with a C. It's just completely slipped my mind. But he was basically a military officer, and that's verified.
Yeah.
And he basically worked in a foreign technology department, and he claims, and this is not long before he died, but he claims that he was basically in charge of taking technology that had been recovered from these UAPs and funneling it out into military contractors,
Right.
and basically going to Lockheed or Raytheon or whoever, mostly Lockheed Skunk Works probably, and saying, "Oh look, we got this. Came from, I don't know, Russians, Chinese, whatever. Just make something up. But we got this stuff, and can you make it work and retro engineer it?" And so, optic fibers, integrated circuits. One interesting thing is look up on Wikipedia about the history of the integrated circuit. And it's not like so and so invented it and got the Nobel Prize for it or whatever. There's just a bunch of theories. It just kind of appears. It's very strange. So let's talk about that next time.
Okay, let's do that. So we'll set a date for that. We'll advertise it. For
Excellent.
those that have still hung around, there's a special treat tonight. I'm going to run you a sneak preview of our new outro. So if you want to hang around for that, you'll see it. With that, it's good night from me, and thank you very much, Ed.
Good night from me too, and hopefully talk to you again soon.
Take care, everyone. Bye.